And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Scott Nance. I am very, very excited to be hosting tonight's very special conversation about The Surfer. What did you all think of the movie? I want to say hello to, of course, the city of Los Angeles. I want to say hello to the 600 theaters nationwide who are joining us right now for this very special live stream. So, for those of you who are watching here and across the country, if you have a question and you want to send it to us via Twitter, X, or whatever you want to call it, make sure you write your question and use the hashtag #TheSurferLive. Right now, I would love to welcome to the stage here for this conversation. Please welcome Director Lorcan Finnegan. It makes me very, very excited to be able to say this. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Academy Award winner Nicolas Cage. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for being here. I got to ask Lorcan, it starts with the screenplay. Like, how did you come across Thomas Martin's script? What was your first take on the surreal nature of this movie?
Yeah, I mean, Tom and I have known each other for a number of years, and we planned on doing something together for maybe 10 years. And this came along as something that was only a couple of pages as a kind of outline, and Tom shared it with me, and I just thought there was something brilliant about it, and simple in a weird way, about like a guy who's has everything together, but he's at a certain point in his life where the cracks are starting to show, and he kind of puts all of his hopes and dreams onto this material thing, this object. Like, he buys a house that will fix all his relationship problems, but of course that doesn't work. So then, like, he almost has to go through what he goes through in order to come out the other side, having gone through like this sort of Jungian psychological journey to figure out what it is that he needs instead of what he actually wants. So that just attracted me to the story straight away.
You know, Nick, I would love to get, first of all, again, Nicolas Cage, everybody.
Thank you for coming out.
Nick, this is saying a lot here, but I think this is one of your very, very best performances, and that is.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
But I would love to hear your take on the screenplay for The Surfer and the character whose name in the screenplay is The Surfer.
So I grew up in California, and I was always fascinated with the surfers that I would see. I used to take the bus to the Santa Monica Pier and watch them, and very much wanted to be a part of it. And so when I saw the title, The Surfer, I thought, well, that's interesting. And then I read the script, and the script it reminded me of a short story that I would aspire to write. I wish I could write a story like The Surfer. I'm interested in that feeling, the feelings of being an outsider, and this script went in so many different directions. I had no idea what was going to happen, and it was full of surprises. And I thought that this was a opportunity to make another movie with a non-linear narrative. I don't like it, like when I listen to music and I get certain pop songs stuck in my head. I like more alternative or jazz fusion. I felt like Lorcan's narrative and the way he shot it and the way he cut it gave it much more of an abstract, dream logic, and surrealist feeling, which I gravitate towards.
Well, when we first got together, tell me about the collaboration that helped the screenplay evolve into closer to what the version that we actually saw.
Yeah, well, we jumped on a Zoom, and then we started chatting through the script that Nick had just read, and we were, of a similar sense of humor and into the same kind of films, and we got some ideas about certain scenes, more about like the kind of pacing of dialogue and certain elements of the story. So me and Tom had a follow-up call with Nick, and then Tom went about implementing some tweaks along the script, and then by the time we went to actually shoot the film, we kind of discussed it quite a lot, but there was still room for some improvisation and for some experimentation and fun to be had while actually on set in Australia.
Well, you, as a producer as well, through Saturn Films, your production company, Nick, what were some of the ideas that you brought to Lorcan when you were first really talking about it?
I was recalling an old Russian short story called The Overcoat, and I thought it would be interesting for him to look at that. And then conversely, he recommended that I reread or read for the first time John Cheever's A Swimmer. And then I looked at Burt Lancaster's wonderful performance in the movie The Swimmer. And so we talked about that. But one of the other reasons why I wanted to jump on board was that Lorcan, I'd seen his picture of Vivarium and also Nocebo, and he has a marvelous sense of humor, which is also very present on set. For example, it's the kind of fast humor. We were doing the scene with the phone that's not connected and there's just a cord dangling. It's like, I really need my phone, guys. Where's the prop phone? I need the phone. And he would go find and go, it's for you. So that's kind of comedy that is in the movie, because he's able to get you to a place of chaos and darkness, but there's always this underlying current of humor, and that's very much part of the process with him, which is liberating. You feel safe, you feel free, you feel like you can collaborate. I worked with a great team of actors.
Yeah.
Each and every one of them were terrific people just to be with, great social experiences, but also really deep diving into the performances. So it was a good experience making the movie, and I think that's why we all felt so free.
Well, let's talk about the casting. Finn Little, and of course, Joey McMahon is fantastic in this movie.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Tell about the casting, and when you all first got together, did you do like a table read or something?
That would have been nice.
Yeah.
No, so the scene in the film where Julian is like offering Nick's character food at the car, and there's flies all over them, and Nick's voice already started changing.
Yeah.
And that was when they first met in like real life. Literally, we were already shooting, and Julian arrived, and it was like, I hope the chemistry works between them, because here it is. Yeah.
First scene for him in the whole picture was the hamburger scene. It was like a 6-page scene. And we went through it together, and he gave me some of his ideas, and I told him where I wanted to go with it. And then Lorcan was telling us what he felt we should bring and the timing of it. And we did a few rehearsals, but right out of the gate, he was doing that scene with me.
You know, I'm curious, because you basically shot in one place. Were you able to shoot chronologically, or did you still have to kind of shoot out of order, which would have made, you know, your performance a little trickier to keep track of how far down the rabbit hole the surfer goes?
Right.
Yeah, we mostly shot in sequence up to a point. I mean, we kind of had to shoot all the car park stuff, and then we'd go down to the beach and shoot the beach stuff and come back in. So we went a little bit out of order, but like there was some stuff that was a little bit tricky to follow in terms of just costumes. We had to get that coffee stain all over his shirt, and then that was going to be his costume then. So like, yeah, and like the bird shit on his shoulder. Once that had landed in the right place, that became part of the costume as well. So there was things like that.
Yeah, and for me, just in terms of graphing the performance and which directions I wanted to go, I knew by the time I had drank the bottle of disgusting water that I wanted my voice to be shot. So when I'm with Julian, I'm there, really God, I'm gonna go down to that beach, I'm gonna surf that break. No, you're not. And so I was like, okay, that's where the character is now vocally. And then Lorcan wanted me to have the bird eggs, and he said, well, I go, how am I going to get the energy to fight Pitbull? The guy's like a zombie at this point. And he said, well, you ate the eggs, you got a little blast of protein, and now you're going to have the water from the photographer, and you're going to be ready to go. And so that's how we sorted it out. But that scene where I'm walking, he had this marvelous camera with an 8mm lens attached to my shoulder, and everything was kind of surreal and almost like a fishbowl. And he just said, okay, well, let's let it rip. Let's see what you're going to do. And I didn't know. I was going to talk about Clown's Casino and Puttanesca Pasta. Or I was actually singing Jump Around by House of Pain. I don't think we could afford the song, but I was talking to the younger Bay Boys, like, yeah, you're going to jump around. It just all came out, you know?
I'll make sure that resurfaces at some stage, by the way.
What was in those eggs?
Well, what about it?
What was in those eggs?
The eggs. It was little quail.
Actually,
Yeah,
yes.
they were very good. Very good. Like, we've all been trying to be Rocky and put the raw eggs in the blender. I said, I've done this before. I can do it.
You talk about the improv, and you also talk about humor sort of popping up kind of when you least expect it, in a moment of like surreal intensity. The rat. When the surfer gets bit by the rat, and he slams the car with the prop. Like, how much of that was?
Well, I can speak to that because it's actually quite amusing.
Good story.
So what happened was before I came out to do the surfer, I wasn't feeling great. So I was stuck in bed and I was watching old movies, and then I went on a Billy Wilder kick. And I saw Billy Wilder's Sabrina with Humphrey Bogart. In that movie, Humphrey Bogart takes an olive out of a martini glass, and he sticks it in his uncle's mouth and he goes, "Eat it." And I could not stop laughing. I was all by myself just cracking up at like 3 in the morning at Bogart putting an olive in this actor's mouth. Can we eat it? So we did the rat bit with slamming the prop rat, not a real rat, a rubber rat. And I said, this thing's really good. This is a great prop. It looks great. It's rubber, but it looks so real. I can use this later. And I put it in my pocket because I thought it'd be marvelous to have the little rubber tail wiggling around as the surfer's walking around. So that was the gist of it. But then I thought, wait a minute, with Pitbull, I could bring the rat back into the scene with Pitbull and tell him to eat it, like Bogart in Sabrina. But it's not an olive, it's a rat. And what's more, I'm going to punk rock the hell out of it and go, eat it, yeah. So that was my ode to Billy Wilder.
Well, there you go. How many shooting days did you have for the duration of this principal photography?
It was 25 days on the location, and then did 2 days on water, stuff like that, which was much more limited. There's only about 5 or 6 of us.
25, that's pretty fast.
Yeah.
Did you do, what was the scene where you sort of had to do the most takes?
The trickiest kind of scene, Alex Bertrand's here actually, who had the...
Pitbull is so great in the movie. Alex, where are you, buddy? There he is.
Yeah, right.
The scene where him and Nick are fighting in the water was particularly tricky because the sea was actually pushing all of us, including Radek, the cinematographer, and everybody in sound, was pushing us all onto the beach. But then it would recede, and suddenly they were just fighting on the sand, and that wasn't the plan. So then we go further into the water, and then start getting sucked out into the sea. So it just was very difficult to control because everyone would just start floating.
I would love to hear about the localism. Now, I sort of read a little bit about localism, surfers, and it's one thing to be territorial, protective, but the localism is so extreme to the point where it becomes violent. And I've heard about this before. What was your take on that? Like, why?
Well, I think it was always sort of baked into the story, and I think Tom was inspired by 2 things. One, a fight that he saw in Sydney on the beach of 2 guys who just come out from surfing. They'd taken off their wetsuits and they put on suits, smart suits, and then one of them said something to the other guy, and they started to beat the shit out of each other on the sand, and he was kind of just really shocked, who are these people? And then he, I think, had a fascination with it, and then read about the Lanuda Bay guys here in California.
Palos Verdes.
Exactly, yeah. So the staging of our Luna Bay in the film is slightly based on that, this sort of crescent-shaped beach with the houses up in the hilltop, that are very exclusive and expensive.
Yeah, I'm curious, Nick, when the surfer starts to really go for a little further down the rabbit hole, and he becomes a little more unhinged, how do you get into character when you're playing a character like that?
Well, I've had all the rehearsal I could ever want with life. Life is the rehearsal. I get into a little meditative zone, and it helps when you're working with a director like Lorcan and actors like Alex and Julian and Nick Kasem, that you feel safe. you feel like you can go for it and have fun. I've had other experiences with like Panis Cosmatos and Mandy and the freak out scene in the bathroom. And what it is you just kind of tap into whatever door you feel. You got to have some faith, and you're going to open that door, and you're not entirely sure, not unlike a wave getting you up on a board, but when it comes, you're going to ride it, and you're going to go with it, and whatever happens, hopefully it'll work. And you have, and I feel like it's a very cathartic feeling, and it's a very, I always say thank you, it's a very relieving feeling, and it's a good feeling. It's not as torturous as you might think, considering watching it, what the character's going through. It's very, not exercising, but it's a purge, it's a purging, it's a cleansing feeling when it works, and it's the best feeling in the world.
So how do you get out of character when you're done?
I mean, if I was Nick Cage 17, 18, 19, like Birdie, and where I'm wearing the bandages every day for 3 months, and it's putting rashes on my face, and going to the dentist and saying, why don't you pull these teeth out because I want to feel some sense of pain, and it'll look good on camera. That would take me months to get out. Now I'm 61, I've been doing it for almost 50 years. I feel like I can just leave it, and I can go home and play with my daughter and have fun and turn it off. And you have to be able to do that, because you have to wake up and go back and be fresh. You have to have little mechanisms in life that you can shut it off. I do not think it's healthy to bring that stuff home.
Right. Another question I have is in the beginning of the film, when you're sitting in the car with Finn, the surfer gives like this monologue that I thought was really, really profound. So I'm curious whether it's for this film or other films, and you have like a page or a couple pages of dialogue to memorize. What is your trick to remembering your lines?
I want to just go over it ad nauseum, ad infinitum, so that I don't have to think about it. And that could be I'm on the elliptical and I'm reading a script front to back, and then again the next day for 2 hours back to front, again and again and again. Because when I'm on the set, the worst thing for an actor, the thing that will cave an actor in more than anything else, is going up on a line. And if you don't get a hold of it, it becomes like a wildfire. And before you know it, you're having a panic attack and you're caving in, and then you're useless to everybody. And that is the worst feeling. The best feeling is when you're getting something from the imagination and it's flowing like a wave and it's propping you up on a board and you're nailing it. That's the best feeling. The worst is that you're shutting down. I never want to feel like that again. So what I do is I run it and I run it and I run it until I'm sick of it. Federico Fellini said, I'm not ready to make a movie until I'm sick of it. And that's where I'm at. Now, not every director lets you do that. Some directors go, well, we're rewriting everything, I'll bring you the page tomorrow. I'm like, what? I can't handle that. So it's a matter of preparation. The key to success, in my view, is preparation plus opportunity equals success.
Let's hear it for that. That's a tough one. How did working with Nicolas Cage surprise you?
Yeah, well, I never needed the script. Ever. It's like, it was all in his head, knew everything, either, the other characters' lines as well, because it was all kind of part of the flow, Sure. And I think we also just had a good time. The longer we were shooting, the kind of more fun we were having, and having just a laugh between takes and joking and stuff. So I think that enabled, like Nick was saying, the kind of, the room for having fun and improvisation and that kind of thing.
Also,
I didn't know what I was gonna do when the what's the right way of saying, when the resolve occurred, like when we find out, for lack of a better word, the MacGuffin, the twist, that they were all in on it, and they were all doing this to me as a gaslighting thing to see if I had the mettle, the guts to be a Bay Boy. I just did not know, how am I going to play this? How am I going to play that resolution? And then yet again, I so often recall movies I have seen, and I think my best teachers have been A, life, and B, being a film enthusiast and watching movies, preferably old movies, because you can take from them and get away with it. But what I saw was David Bowie. in a movie called Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Yeah, right, exactly. A great picture, great score, great filmmaker. And in that movie, David Bowie is in a Japanese prison camp, and the head, I guess the colonel, or I don't know what you would call him, but he was interested in David Bowie's character, so he wanted to see what his worth was, what his mettle was, what his guts were. And he lined him up in front of a firing squad, and he blindfolded him, and he marched him in, and he sentenced him to death, and he was going to die by firing squad. And David Bowie is just there, and the warden or the colonel, what have you, is watching him and seeing how he's going to react, and then they shoot him. And it turned out that they were blanks. And then they take his blindfold off, and he gets up and he goes, "That's a good one." And I was like, whoa, that's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I remember that you were kind of worried about that scene as well. Like,
very worried.
And I remember saying that, like, I think the way to do it is a little bit like The Wizard of Oz as well, where, like, you know, it's like Dorothy in bed, and then all the guys are around, and it's like, you were there. You know?
Was that close to the end of the shoot?
Probably, yeah, about a third of the way in.
He brought all the Wizard of Oz and that whole effect, and to be honest, I wasn't entirely sure what they were doing, what they were getting up to, but we were going for it. And then I brought the Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence line in as the clincher. But it was like that's the kind of collaboration I wish to have every time I make a movie.
Speaking of the effect, the thing that strikes me from the very, very beginning is the cinematography. I would love to hear about how you worked with your DP and the way you shot this with the colors were so saturated and just really, really popped.
Well, I think the initial approach was actually through the character in a way, because Nick's character, the surfer, left Australia when he was, you know, maybe about 12, moved to California, and then was returning in his 50s and had this sense of nostalgia about the place. So, like, from his psychological perspective, it was old school.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that was sort of a way into the style of shooting it in a way. And then I was also influenced by a lot of the new wave Australian films that were coming out in the 60s and 70s, like Wake and Fright and Long Weekend and Picnic at Hanging Rock and Walkabout, and films like that. And of course, The Swimmer. In terms of like the tans and the saturation and that kind of technicolor feel, because we knew, like, with the story and the script, that it was going to have to get hotter and hotter and hotter and really kind of beat down on them. So we used these vintage lenses that were very flary, and we used flame bars under the camera to create more distortion from the heat, and a color palette that was very hot, and in-camera techniques like bendy mirrors that we shoot into.
Yeah, even down to the performance in one scene, the scene with the photographer where she's giving me the charge to get the aircon to work in the car. Even down to that, Lorcan and I spend a minute talking about Burt Lancaster's tonal delivery in The Swimmer. Like, well, I'm gonna swim every pool, and I'm gonna be right there. I'm buying that house right up there on Clifftop Drive. Just totally channeling that.
We have a question here. I'd like to ask. Someone sent this. Love to hear about filming on location and share how the beach, the set, if you will, influenced the surfer.
Well, I mean, the location was magical, and a lot of it had to do with animals. I mean, those flies were everywhere, and they were biting, and we had all this sweet, sticky syrup to look like sweat, and they were just all over. The scene with Julian with the hamburger was just covered in flies. And then, of course, as soon as I landed in Australia, I'm about to go up to Yallingup, and where we're shooting this little beach in this little parking lot, and the guy that received me at the airport, he was like in security, said, "Now, Nick, be careful up there, because the white sharks are really biting, and we've lost a lot of surfers." I'm like, oh shit. So I'm in the water, and I'm always thinking, what is swimming under my feet right now? And there was alarms and things like that, and helicopters making sure the sharks weren't too close. And that all just goes into it. That all goes into not only the performance, but into the process and the storytelling narrative. I mean, I like to call it the genus loci. The genie of a place can contribute as much to performance as the other actors.
You know what I love hearing is that even at this stage of your career, there's still moments of you where you're filming and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to do that? Like when you talked about the big payoff at the end. So, having seen your films on the big screen, your breakthrough movies like Peggy Sue Got Married and back in the 80s and Raising Arizona, at this stage, like what were some of the unique challenges other than the end? The unique challenges that you faced with filming The Surfer?
Well, I mean, I would say that the most interesting challenge is that we're making a movie that takes place in one tiny location, a beach and a parking lot. How are we going to keep the audience interested? And thankfully, Lorcan is a filmmaker, along with his marvelous director of photography, where they knew how to build it. They knew how to get close on the surfer's face and almost get inside the mind and through the eyes and see what he's really feeling like, and then let it rip with clams, casino, and puttanesca pasta, and eat the rat. I mean, there was a lot of nuance, I thought, that was built into how he directed the performance as well as the directions that the story was unfolding.
Yeah, I remember Leonora Darby, the producer, who's also here. I remember when we were shooting that scene with the clams, casino, puttanesca pasta, just kind of in tears, laughing at the madness of it. It's going, what kind of movie are we making here?
I understand you also got bit by something?
Yeah, well, so that was interesting, right? We're out there, it's late at night, what is it, 3 a.m., and we're doing the scene in the grasslands with all the branches and what have you, and we had the shot with the snake. The snake wasn't a venomous snake, thank God, but nonetheless, he wasn't really moving, and we wanted it to move. And Lorcan said, can we get it to move a little more? And we had a snake wrangler, and the DP wanted it to move a little more, and I wanted it to move a little more, and I'm not really afraid of snakes, but I said, well, how are we gonna get it to move? And the snake wrangler, who's there to not upset the snake, said, just tickle its tail. So I said, you sure? Yeah, just tickle its tail. So I went, okay, and I went, and I went, yeah. And I'm excavating snake teeth out of my hand. Okay, gee, thanks.
You have a scar?
I don't have. It wasn't that bad, but it was enough to give me pause for thought. Like, who is this person?
I remember she said to you, then she was like, oh yeah, he'll do that.
Why did you tell me to do it? I digress.
I would love to hear, the first time you were able to screen the film for the public. I mean, that's a nerve-wracking experience, and no matter how many movies you've made over the years, what was that like for you, especially because the movie is so special and unique?
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, it was a very unique experience because we premiered at Cannes, in the Palais, gigantic theater. We're all wearing tuxedos. But we'd only finished making the film. It was like a big rush to finish it on time for the screening. So it's amazing when you're like racing to get everything done, and you're literally just finished, and then you can show it to 2,500 people in a gigantic cinema. And we got a great response. The standing ovation is still going on, I believe. And
it was great. I mean, I'll tell you what. Inside baseball, I had made a movie called Pig.
Yes, Pig, yes!
Which is a movie I love. I love The Surfer too. But anyway, I emailed Thierry Frémaux at the Cannes festival runner. I said, listen, man, I really think we should put Pig in your festival. And then he said, no, I don't think it's going to work. So then he invited us for The Surfer, and we're there, and it was great. It was a great night. And I wanted to make sure it wasn't one of those things where we're like, we're crying, thank you, none of that crap. Yeah, like, eat the rat. I'm saying it in French, mange le rat. Mange le rat. Everyone's screaming and laughing. laughing and we're clapping and we're really enjoying it. And, you know, in Cannes, they've got this thing about the applause meter, like how long is the
6
standing
minutes.
ovation or whatever. But then we were in full throttle, and I said. I said I was really excited, and then I mentioned, you know, I came here for Pig, but he wouldn't let the movie in, and I'm just glad he finally let us in. I'm so happy to be here. And the applause kept going, and then at 6 minutes, he gives you the microphone, which means he's cutting the applause off. He left about 10 minutes of applause on the table. So there you go. That's how the applause-o-meter works.
Oh, it's crazy. So
louder.
the thing is, you know, you brought up Pig, and you know, a movie that I was just talking about before I walked into the theater was The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And I gotta say, you are a weight of massive talent because you are doing the best work of your career right here and now.
Thank you.
Cage.
I appreciate it.
So I want to say 2 things, actually 3 things to everybody watching in theaters nationwide. I want a big thank you for joining us. I want to say the movie opens Friday or Thursday night because that's how it usually goes these days. So make sure you go on social media and you post how great this film is, and you got to see it on the big screen. You know, go on Instagram, go on TikTok, definitely TikTok. If you want to use X, knock yourself out. And also, if you could please stay seated here in Los Angeles while our talent exits, that would really help us out. Once again, thank you, everybody. See the Surfer in
Thanks,
theaters.
guys. Thank you.
Theaters.
Thank you guys.
Awesome, fellas. Great to meet you.